terrace. So we'll flip things around a little bit this evening, and I'll start with a story, the message for us all. A rabbi once asked his students, it was before there were rabbis who were her, how do we know when the night has ended and the day has begun? The students thought they grasped the importance of the question. There are, after all, prayers that can be recited and rites and rituals that can be performed only at night. And there are prayers and rituals that happen during the day. For example, in a few minutes, we will join in Ma'ariv Aravim, our prayer for evening. It is therefore important to know when night has ended and when day has begun, and the opposite. It is important, the students believed, and it is in our tradition, to get the prayers right and the rituals correct. So the brightest of the students offered an answer and said, Rabbi, I know when the time has changed. When I look out at the fields and I can distinguish between my field and the field of my neighbor, that's when the night has ended and the day has begun. A second student offered his answer. Rabbi, when I look from my field and I see a house, and I can tell it's my house and not the house of my neighbor, that's when night has ended and day has begun. A third student offered another answer. Rabbi, when I see an animal in the distance and I know what animal it is, I can tell whether it's a cow or horse or sheep. That's when the night has ended and the day has begun. And a fourth student offered yet another answer. Rabbi, when I see a flower and I can make out the colors of the flower, whether they are red or yellow or blue, that's when night has ended and day has begun. With each answer, the rabbi's face had a sadder, more severe frown until he finally shouted, no, none of you understand this. He said, you only divide. You divide from your house to the house of your neighbor, your field from your neighbor's. You distinguish one kind of animal from another, one color from another. He asked, is that all we do? Divide, separate, split the world into pieces? Isn't the world broken enough? Aren't there enough fragments in our world? Is that what the Torah is for? No, my students, it's not that way. It's not that way at all. The shocked students looked at their teacher and its very sad face. One of them ventured and said, Rabbi, then tell us, how do we know that night has ended and day has begun? The rabbi stared back into their gentle faces, and with a voice that was as gentle and imploring, he said, when you look at the face of the person who is beside you, and you can see that that person is your brother or your sister, then finally the night has ended and the day has begun. The story is so simple, yet not. From our earliest years, right, we make distinctions, good and bad, yes and no, right and wrong. We compare and contrast ourselves to others to make connections and distinguish ourselves, to seek order and understanding. And as we know, our tradition focuses on the passages of time and marking time, right? When Shabbat begins, when to say the Shema, when rituals can be performed. For the rabbis of old, these distinctions gave order and instruction, clarity, so they would not know what to do and when. So too for us, even if we're not exactly on their schedule, we certainly as Reformed Jews, for example, make Shabbat the time that's not exactly sunset. We make it the time that is meaningful. There's nothing inherently wrong about making distinctions of time and space. To the contrary, when we distinguish time and space, we can elevate. Think about ordinary and sacred, Shabbat, and the rest of the week. Perhaps the most obvious distinction is Havdalah, right? That ritual at the end of Shabbat, which is called separation. The story also speaks to something deeper. It speaks to making differences that separate ourselves in a divisive way. Even if we don't mean to make divisions, listen again to the rabbi's teaching. He says you only divide. You divide your house from your neighbor's house, your field from your neighbor's field. You distinguish one animal from another, one color from another. Is that all we do? Divide, split the world into pieces? Isn't the world broken enough? Don't we have too many fragments already? That is the simple and yet profound message of this Shabbat. This Shabbat called Shabbat Shoftim, after the name of the Torah portion, Shoftim, about judges and justice. This is a Shabbat on which we read that famous commandment, Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Justice in Jewish tradition is not about making distinctions that are divisive. Justice is about treating one another with fairness and without difference. Justice is about eliminating the differential. And so as we begin Shabbat, and we look at the sky, which is changing, I can now see so many more faces even since I began this message. Look at the sky that will change while we are here in prayer. I invite you to look at the day becoming evening. We know this doesn't happen like that. It's not a crash or a bang, but a gradual movement of the sun and a change in the color of the sky. I invite you to look around at our worship space. If you're home, look around outside your windows too. And look when you leave. Look at the people you encounter today, tonight, and in the days to come. Recognize the humanity in each person and highlight the connection, not the distinction. Let us see that each is our brother and our sister, and let us run after justice with a whole heart and with hands that seek to put together fragments and broken pieces. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Indeed, justice, justice, we must pursue.